Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday morning Bible study. As we continue our trek through Genesis, we are almost at the end. Here we are almost at the end of 2021, and we are almost at the end of Genesis. We are beginning chapter 44 today, and depending on a few factors, we will probably cover at least 2 chapters today. And as the story is a pretty continuous narrative, so it'll be probably fairly easy to do that. Now, the way we left it last time was with the end of chapter 43, where the brothers came back with Benjamin. Jacob was very nervous about them leaving with Benjamin, basically saying, look, if you don't come back with him, I have nothing left to live for. And so it made Judah take responsibility for Benjamin and say, if anything happens to Benjamin, then I want you to hold me responsible. I am singularly responsible if anything happens to Benjamin. And that's kind of a setup for what we're going to see today in the text. Now, so in chapter 44, we begin. And so let's start. Then he, Joseph, commanded the steward of his house, fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the top of his sack. Now, this is okay. This isn't him being tricky or anything. But put my cup, the silver cup, in the top of the sack of the youngest, that is Benjamin, with his money for the grain. And he did as Joseph told him. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away with their donkeys. When they had gone only a short distance from the city, Joseph said to his steward, go follow after the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, why have you returned evil for good? Why have you stolen my silver cup? Is it not from this that my Lord drinks? Does he not indeed use it for divination? You have done wrong in doing this. When he overtook them, he repeated these words to them. They said to him, why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants that they should do such a thing. Look, the money that we found at the top of our sacks, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. Why then would we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Should it be found with any one of your servants, let him die. Moreover, the rest of us will become my Lord's slaves. He said, even so, in accordance with your words, let it be. He with whom it is found shall become my slave, but the rest of you shall go free. Then each one quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack. And he searched, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this, they tore their clothes. Then each one loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house while he was still there, and they fell to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, what deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that one such as I can practice divination? And Judah said, what can we say to my Lord? What can we speak? How can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Here we are then, my Lord's slaves, both we and also the one in whose possession the cup has been found. But he said, far be it from me that I should do so. Only the one in whose possession the cup was found shall be my slave. But as for you, go up in peace to your father. All right, let's pause there. Let's pause there. Any commentary there? I mean, oh, Bill, you're on silent. Yeah.
I say it's obviously a test. There's no doubt about that. I still wonder, though. I'm not sure his motives are just to get him.
Mhm.
Like if he put the money in the sack, which I didn't think he did to get them, but I still don't think his motives are to get them. I guess his motives are to uncover their bona fides or their current feelings about their brother.
Yes,
Uh,
no, I think that's right. I think that's right.
which would be terribly important.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, but to bring that out, he has to make them squirm. You know,
Yeah.
he has to apply some heat to them to find out what they're made of. And there's no question, but that by doing what he's done, he set it up so that the brothers now would the brothers now are offering themselves as slaves, I mean, for at least the apparent misdeed of one, the brothers are offering all of them as slaves to Joseph in response to this, perceived misdeed.
Uh, and they also earlier, I mean, also say that if you find this whatever in in our sacks, we will all be your slaves. And this was even before it's found in Benjamin's
Yeah.
sack. So this shows that they, as a brotherhood, are pretty cohesive and care about each other. They're all willing to be slaves if it's found.
Yeah. 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 That's right. And I mean, that alone is what in Joseph's mind would be moral improvement. Would definitely be moral improvement in them. Now Joseph in response has a very interesting response, and it makes possible what's going to follow, and we'll be reading that in a moment. But when the brothers offer themselves as, say, look, we'll all be your slaves now. Joseph says, far be it from me that I should do so. Only the one in whose possession the cup was found shall be my slave. But as for you, go up in peace to your father. Okay, now what we know right now is we know that the brothers absolutely cannot go back to Jacob without Benjamin. They know that's just not going to happen. And we're going to see how they deal with that, how Judah in particular deals with that. But they know they can't do that, because they know that if they do, they're going to break their father's heart. And they're absolutely determined not to do that. Which is different than years before, when they were perfectly willing to break their father's heart to get rid of Joseph, right? Okay, so this is another notch in the belt of moral improvement. All right, so let's go on. Verse 18. In response to Joseph saying that, then Judah stepped up to him and said, "Oh, my Lord, let your servant please speak a word in my Lord's ears. And do not be angry with your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. My Lord asked his servant, saying, have you a father or brother? And we said to my Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a young brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead. He alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, bring him down to me so that I may set my eyes on him. And we said to my Lord, the boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Then you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall see my face no more. When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, go again, buy us a little food, we said, we cannot go down. Only if our youngest brother goes with us will we go down, for we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and one said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm comes to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in sorrow to Sheol. Now, therefore, when I come to your servant, my father, and the boy is not with us, then as his life is bound up in the boy's life, when he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. And your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant, our father, with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became surety for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I will bear the blame in the sight of my father all my life. Now, therefore, please let your servant remain as a slave to my Lord in place of the boy, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the suffering that would come upon my father. Okay. So,
Even for an Old Testament story, that whole section is so modern in a way. I mean, that whole section is so deep and so into human feelings and stuff. It's kind of amazing to find it in the book of Genesis.
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I've read it before, but it's never really, never really realized what the boy was saying, what Judah was saying.
Yeah, this is psychologically very complex. I mean, it's really speaking about an interior life in a way that is not customary. Even in the Bible, it's not customary.
I was thinking the same thing Lois was saying. It's like human nature hasn't changed in years, you know.
Yeah. It's just so often in the Bible, the action, the emphasis is on action. It's emphasis on what people do, not so much on what people feel, and this is this whole narrative is all about how people are feeling, and I mean, Joseph maybe preeminently, but Jacob and now the brothers are humanized. We're actually seeing into their interior lives, and in this speech here, into Judah's interior life. That Judah can't bring himself. It's not just about honor, or a sworn duty. It's about, I can't bear to see my father's heart get broken. I just can't deal with that. That's profound. That's really deep stuff. Again, it's not about a promise he's made, like, I will not break my word. It's, I can't bear to see my father fall apart. I can't bear to see his heart broken like this. And so I, Judah, would rather spend the rest of my life in slavery than be the source of that kind of suffering for my father. Not to mention Benjamin. I mean, obviously he's asking Joseph. He's saying to Joseph. He doesn't know he's Joseph yet, but he's offering himself as a substitute, and both sparing his father and sparing Benjamin himself. Both of which those brothers, Judah included, did that he did not spare before. When they presented the bloody coat to Jacob, they let Jacob think that Joseph was dead.
Right. and-
knowing what that would do to Joseph, to Jacob, they did it anyway. And then, of course, what they did to Joseph himself, they gave him up to slavery. Now, Judah specifically, I mean, all the brothers feel the same way, but Judah specifically says, I can't inflict that kind of suffering on my father, and I am willing to substitute myself to save Benjamin. It's a complete reversal, complete opposite of what happened before. And in that way, it's that Joseph has orchestrated these events in such a way that, yes, it's made them squirm, but it's, Bill, it's along the lines of what you said, that it's giving them an opportunity, unbeknownst to them, it's giving them an opportunity to undo what they had done, to redeem themselves, and in quite specific ways, in ways that actually do, in a sense, serve as the opposite of what they did before.
Query, Tom, whether or not human nature has in fact changed from this one incident. I'm not saying it has. I'm just saying I wonder, given what appears to be our modern societal emphasis on me, the emphasis is always on what I want to do, even in traffic, in almost every instance of modern life.
Right.
What I want to do is more important than your life, basically. Yeah. So I'm Calvin and Knox, and I'm dubious about whether or not, generally, I'm sure there are exceptions, but generally speaking, it would be very difficult to find somebody who would offer themselves into a life of slavery just to keep from making their father unhappy. I have my doubts.
I will say that this is informed by the memory of this happening before. Yeah. That they are, I mean, we've already seen earlier, like in chapter 41 or 42, that the brothers already have a degree of guilt over what happened before, over what they did before, a degree of guilt over the suffering that they brought onto their father. They already feel guilty about it. And now, now they're confronted with the possibility of going back without Benjamin, already feeling guilty about Joseph and guilty about what they did to their father. And now compounding that with just this unbearable grief.
I'm not questioning their motives. I'm just saying, I wonder if we could find a Judah today.
Well, I think we could. I think we can, as long as we're, if we're talking within our families. I mean, it is harder. I mean, I'll grant, I agree with you that, that if you're asking, if this is about, helping out a stranger, that may be a different story. But like a friend or a family member, would you put yourself at great inconvenience or personal suffering in order to spare a parent or spare
the old man will get over it. I'm offering myself into a lifetime of slavery, and his agony, time heals all things. His agony will pass. So for goodness sake, I am young. I'm going to be a slave for the rest of my life, just so that the old man doesn't shed a few tears over his other son. Is
this the cynicism of a lawyer?
Well, I say I'm now Calvin and Knox about the gravity of human nature.
No, and there's, I mean, yeah. Well, I think that this would be my own take, is that the text knows that most people are like that, or knows that that's. I don't want to say most people are like that. I want to say that knows that that tendency is within the human heart. The text knows that, the text assumes it. And so what Judah is doing here
It's a big deal.
is extraordinary. It is extraordinary. It is representing a great leap of, you know, of moral integrity and courage to do it. It's lifting and it's presenting what Judah is being presented as doing here is not just doing the right thing. He's presented as doing something kind of heroic in a way. But remember, this is all in contrast to his behavior, you know, what, 20 years before. And so his heroic behavior is, it is necessary for him to atone for his act of hatred, indifference, hatred towards Joseph, but indifference towards what it would do to their father. You know, in a way, Judah and his brothers were acting on the worst tendencies within any human heart, but acting on those worst tendencies. And so in a way, it would take an act of moral heroism to undo it, or to sort of heal the wounds. And it, as we will see in the next chapter, this act, this morally heroic act on Judah's part, actually is what triggers Joseph. You know, Joe, we don't know how long, if chapter 45 had not happened, we don't know how long Joseph would have kept the ruse going. I mean, we don't need, you know, we have no idea. But this act of moral heroism on the part of Judah actually does trigger Joseph, where Joseph can't keep the ruse going. He's compelled to, as it were, take the mask off, which is what we're going to look at at the next. And it's, and once again, I just reaffirm what all of you have said. This is what is shown here in this chapter, but in this chapter 45 is profound in the way it depicts, you know, the interior life of these characters. Okay, so let's look at it. Chapter 45. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all those who stood by him. And he cried out, "Send everyone away from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, so dismayed were they at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come closer to me." And they came closer. He said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are 5 more years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You shall settle in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, as well as your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. I will provide for you there. since there are 5 more years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have will not come to poverty. And now your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my own mouth that speaks to you. You must tell my father how greatly I am honored in Egypt and all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here." Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, while Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. And after that, his brothers talked with him. Just go ahead and read the whole thing. When the report was heard in Pharaoh's house, "Joseph's brothers have come," Pharaoh and his servants were pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, do this, load your animals and go back to the land of Canaan. Take your father and your households and come to me, so that I may give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you may enjoy the fat of the land. You are further charged to say, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Give no thought to your possessions, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours." The sons of Israel did so. Joseph gave them wagons according to the instruction of Pharaoh, and he gave them provisions for the journey. To each one of them he gave a set of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 sets of garments. To his father he sent the following: 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and provision for his father on the journey. Then he sent his brothers on their way, and as they were leaving, he said to them, "Do not quarrel along the way." So they went up out of Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. And they told him, "Joseph is still alive. He is even ruler over all the land of Egypt." Jacob was stunned. He could not believe them. But when they had told him all the words of Joseph that he had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Israel said, "Enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I must go and see him before I die." Oh, that's good. That is good. Wow.
I've heard that expression almost all my life, living off the fat of the land, and I never knew where it came from. I should have known, either the Bible or Shakespeare.
Bible or Shakespeare. I've always said that if once you've exhausted the Bible, Shakespeare, and the Beatles, you've covered just about everything. Oh. Oh, wow. Oh, man. Yeah. What do you think? I mean, it's just wow.
I think it's heart-wrenching. I think it's an amazing passage. Absolutely amazing.
Oh, yeah. It's hard for me to read it out loud without getting a little
I could tell.
You know?
I could tell you were about to cry.
It's just so beautiful. It's just so beautiful.
It is. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
I mean, naturally, I'm feeling for Joseph, but I think of all the people in the story, I think it's actually Jacob that I'm most happy for, in a way. That this is just going to completely. I love the word. The spirit of their father Jacob revived. Well,
is Jacob aware now that his son's tried to do his other son in? He is aware.
No, not that we didn't.
Not as such. Not as such. Now I don't think so. There's at some point, as we go a little further, I think there's a point where I forget for sure, but I think there's a point where Jacob has some consciousness of what happened, presumably because he was, brought up to speed. But apparently it's not a source of, of lingering resentment or anything. It seems to be, it's like everything seems to be forgiven at this point.
And once more, the discrimination that started the whole issue is practiced, giving Benjamin 300 pieces of silver and 5 sets of garments. That's what caused the whole stinking mess.
Right.
discrimination in favor of Joseph. And Joseph just, doing it again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny what Joseph says, and where he says, but to each he gave a set of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 sets of garments. Loads up the stuff for his father, and then verse 24 it said, then he sent his brothers on their way, and as they were leaving, he said to them, "Do not quarrel along the way."
Just because I've screwed you over again.
Yeah, right. It's my study notes here in my Bible say something along those lines, that Joseph has some consciousness of the fact that he's doing more, and that it was precisely Jacob favoring him that brought on the trouble in the first place. Joseph shows some self-consciousness of what he's doing, and recognizing that the brothers had reacted the way they had when Jacob was the one doing it. And so Joseph says, well, okay, you see what's on these donkeys, don't quarrel along the way. My study notes here kind of indicate, number one, that he is conscious of it. He's conscious of what he's doing and conscious of how the brothers might respond. So that's part of what motivates it. But that him saying this is also a little tongue in cheek, in a way, that it's a little, it's almost that, and again, this is an interpretation. This isn't, I'm not stating this as the truth or what the text actually says for sure. But the idea that Joseph is almost having a little fun with them over what happened before. Almost like he's teasing them about it. Not in a bad way.
Neither Jacob nor Joseph had any basic understanding of human nature and jealousies that come from discrimination. Obviously.
Right.
But you have to think too that what Joseph did to Benjamin was pretty bad. I mean, worse than the other brothers, because Joseph set Benjamin up. Imagine how Benjamin felt when they found the cup in his sack. And he knew he hadn't put it there, but there he is.
Right.
So maybe he's kind of just making it up a little bit to Benjamin, because he made Benjamin the fall guy for a little while.
Right. For a period of time, yeah, for a brief period of time. But him doing that, of course, sets it up so that Judah can be the hero, and Judah can come forward and in a way kind of undo the misdeeds of the past, and sets it up so that everything can be made right. This is really, really good. Let's hold on, let me just look ahead here. Let's go ahead and read the first part of chapter 46. There's once you get into verse 8, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we don't really need to read. I mean, we can look at it, but we don't need to go into detail, because it's a whole bunch of names. It's basically a genealogy, a list of descendants and whatnot. But yeah, let's look at the first part of chapter 46. It says, when Israel set out on his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. Then he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again. I just love this line. And Joseph's own hand. Wow. And Joseph's own hand shall close your eyes. Golly. That is just great. And Joseph's own hand shall close your eyes. Then Jacob set out from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones, and their wives in the wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry him. They also took their livestock and the goods that they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and they came to Egypt, Jacob and all his offspring with him, his sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters. All his offspring he brought with him to the land of Egypt. And then in verses 8 through 27 is a listing. It's basically a listing of the company, a listing of all the people that went down. It functions as a genealogy. It is believed, just on first glance, you would think it might be from the priestly document. I don't believe it is, although it does appear, according to my study notes, says that this list was originally a separate document that has been adapted for its context here. Yeah. So it doesn't seem to be a P source. It just seems to be an unknown separate source that was incorporated here that listed all of these people. But for the context, again, it's basically telling us who went down to Egypt. And so it ends with verse 27. The children of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2. All the persons of the house of Jacob who came down into Egypt were 70. And so then we'll just go ahead and finish chapter 46 and start and wrap up some discussion. Israel sent Judah ahead to Joseph to lead the way before him into Goshen. And when they came to the land of Goshen, Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to meet his father Israel in Goshen. He presented himself to him, fell on his neck, and wept on his neck a good while. Israel said to Joseph, I can die now, having seen for myself that you are still alive. Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and tell Pharaoh and will say to him, my brothers and my father's household who are in the land of Canaan have come to me. The men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. When Pharaoh calls you and says, what is your occupation? You shall say, your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth, even until now, both we and our ancestors, in order that you may settle in the land of Goshen, because all shepherds are abhorrent to the Egyptians. I just love that. Notice that Joseph is advising them not to be completely truthful about their occupation, but they don't listen.
What's the difference between a shepherd and keepers of livestock? They said, what is your servants have been keepers of livestock in order that you may settle in the land, because all shepherds are poor.
Yeah, and I was going to say that was what I was wishing for in my preparation. I was wishing for some kind of clarification on what is so abhorrent about a shepherd, but keeper of livestock would be, donkeys, camels, not camels.
Goshen's not actually in Egypt. Goshen's not actually in Egypt. Is that right?
No, I believe it is. I mean,
they're saying, we know you don't like shepherds, so we'll go to Goshen.
Yeah, it's separate from the royal cities and all that kind of thing. Now, of course, that's going to continue. Goshen being the center of the Israelite occupation, that's going to be continuing on into the book of Exodus, where that's where the Israelite slaves primarily are.
And they're telling him they are speaking to Pharaoh in this passage, I presume, and they're saying, in order that you may settle the land of Goshen. You is Pharaoh?
No, you is the family of Jacob.
Because he said, when Pharaoh calls you and says, what is your occupation? You shall say,
Your
your
servant.
servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth until now, both we and our ancestors, in order that you may settle. You think Joseph is switching from talking about Pharaoh to talking about them?
Well, actually, the quote, yeah, I was going to say when Pharaoh calls you and says, what is your occupation? You shall say. Joseph is saying that my family shall say, your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth, even until now, both we and our ancestors. That's what he says to say. And then Joseph is saying to them,
you may settle
in order that you, my family, may settle in the land of. He's not reporting what Pharaoh would say.
I see that. And Goshen is sort of the back 40, I guess, from Egypt. Pharaoh wouldn't mind having shepherds there.
Right, apparently. Apparently not. Yeah. Or yes. Oh, this is good stuff. It really is. I was looking forward to getting to this part, just because of the sense of homecoming and wow. Yeah. Now, and the thing is, we've still got some really good emotional moments. We won't do it today, but in chapter 47, there's we have a little more. We have a little more of these final days of Jacob and his interaction with Joseph and so forth. Yeah. I'll just make a note to myself here.
Why do you suppose it is that Joseph doesn't seem to have ever married or had a family? At least we're not told that he did.
Oh, no. He did.
Before now?
It was there are two places where there's a reference to it. Back in like chapter 42, I believe. It was back in chapter, let's see. Hold on, I can tell you. It was back in chapter 41. Back in chapter 41, right around chapter 41, beginning in verse 50.
Oh, I see. 2 sons were born to Joseph.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And he married Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, Manasseh and Ephraim. And then there's also a reference in what we just kind of passed over just now, in chapter 46. If you start at verse 26, it says, all the persons belonging to Jacob who came into Egypt, who were his own offspring, not including the wives of his sons, were 66 persons in all. The children of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2. Again, Manasseh and Ephraim. All the persons of the house of Jacob who came into Egypt were 70. So
I just can't remember things that long.
So yeah. So, of course, all of this is going to set up the events of the book of Exodus. The fact of God's people being the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob being in Egypt in the first place, and the conditions that then led to their being made slaves. And then, of course, God's ultimate liberation of them through Moses. But yeah, for me, the great takeaway here is, well, there are 2 great takeaways. One is just the incredible psychological complexity of these this story, just this peering into the interior lives of these characters in a way that is virtually unheard of it's virtually unheard of in ancient literature, period, not just the Bible. Really, honestly, the only other place at least in the Old Testament, the only other place I can think of that is comparable is in I forget if it's either 1st or 2nd Samuel, but where King David has his son Absalom rise up in rebellion against him, trying to take his throne. And David, of course, is forced to resist his son's rebellion. But it was never his intention that Absalom would die. And in fact, he even issued orders, to the effect, don't kill him. And one of David's generals, thinking that he was doing David's will, killed Absalom. And when David gets the news, there's that wonderful scene, which would later be picked up by William Faulkner in his great novel Absalom. But he's where he's presented the news, and he's presented the news as if the messenger thinks he's supposed to be happy at this news.
Let me ask you this, Tom. Aren't
Yeah.
there many stories in the Old Testament that deal with the deviousness of certain individuals? It seems to me that there are a lot of devious characters, and that certainly is psychology, I would think. So
Yeah.
it may be a different kind, but it's replete with stories of deviousness and deception. And
Oh yeah. Well, we've been reading about those, definitely, with Jacob
exactly.
and Isaac. And
I would say it's filled with psychology.
well, fair enough. I wanted to show you real quick. Let me just find it. It's let's see. It's 2nd Samuel that I'm thinking of. Let's see. Here we go. It is. Yeah, here we go. In 2nd Samuel chapter 18, where he's brought the news of Absalom's death, right before he's given the news of Absalom's death, the king, David said to the Cushite, "Is it well with the young man Absalom?" And the Cushite answered, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise up to do you harm be like that young man." And the king was deeply moved, and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would that I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." Yeah, really powerful expression of grief. And just the whole situation. That whole situation was very complicated, it was morally complicated, and but just this profound expression of grief in there. But yeah, we have just a level of, we have a depth here that's just really profound. The other great takeaway is something that is actually quite friendly to us Presbyterians, at least in our tradition's emphasis upon the providence of God and the idea, which all Christians embrace. I'm not just saying about Presbyterians, but that that great verse in Romans 8:28 about that God works all things together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. And this text here, where Joseph says that, well, actually, he hasn't said it yet. He said something before about, that it wasn't you who sent me to Egypt, it was God. That God was kind of behind the scenes, providentially ordering these events in this way to get me to Egypt, so that God could use me in this way to, basically save a country and save you, and save all of you. And then later, I think it's going to be in chapter 48, which we haven't gotten to yet. But in chapter 48, Joseph is going to say something on the order of that what you intended for evil, God has intended for good. And it doesn't resolve the question of whether God was literally controlling the events in terms of like pulling puppet strings, or something else. It doesn't resolve that question. But at the very least, the image that is presented is of a God who is working with and through even the evil actions of human beings, and ultimately bringing about redemption and salvation. And we've got, this is the most profound expression of it so far in Genesis, but all throughout Genesis, and especially in the J document, the J material, where God has, but we saw as a result of the flood that God just came to an understanding that human beings were flawed, but God am no longer going to respond to human flaws by killing them all. I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to, in effect, work with them. They're flawed, yes, but I'm going to work with that. I'm going to work with their flaws. I'm going to work with their mistakes. I'm going to work with all the bad calls they make and work out the best from all of that. And again, we see that all through the book of Genesis, where God is working with, flawed vessels, with Abraham, with Isaac, Jacob preeminently. He's not squashing them every time they make a mistake. He's kind of taking their mistakes into account, but nevertheless bringing about good. And this is here is kind of the ultimate expression of that. So good stuff. All right. Well, I have a lunch meeting today in just a few minutes, so I'm going to have to go ahead and sign off. But before we do that, let's have a prayer together. And Lois, we will remember Carol in that prayer. And when you speak with her, just let her know that she is very much in all of our prayers. So, all right. I'm going to stop the recording here.